was originally going to ask Fran's question about Jackson Vanik, but I've come up with another one. In the last 20 years with the single market, European Union really has become a kind of world-class regulation hub. I mean, they're setting the standards increasingly, I think, for the international trading community. And at the same time, the EU, especially the Germans, under Mrs. Merkel, has pushed this initiative for regulatory convergence and harmonization with the United States. My sense is that there's a tremendous value. There'd be a big boom if we could actually make headway with the EU on harmonizing regulations, but not much has happened. I mean, who's to really blame for this? Are the Europeans not flexible? Is it the U.S. side? Why can't we move more quickly on this agenda?
That's a very good, very good question. There are a couple of issues here. First of all, when you take away all the tariffs and the other obstructions, then competitive economies try and set regulatory obstructions so that they can in some way slow down the competition. We've been doing it for years. We do it. I mean, I can give you 5 products or 5 industries that we do it very well. At the same time, if you look at the regulatory tsunami that confronts the United States with the new healthcare law, which sets up 158 new bureaucracies, and with the Dodd-Frank legislation, which mandates 258 or something new rules and suggests 188 more, recognize when we did that it's going to take a life's work to put those together. And then you have all the regulations coming out of the EPA because what they were trying to jam through the Congress couldn't happen. And you're just going to start to see what's coming out of the Labor Department, not only on, but mostly on hiring and payment rules and so on. And that in itself will choke a horse. So I believe regulatory harmonization is worth a fortune. And I would hope that if we did a deal with the EU or something, remember regulation was one of them, or with others, that we could start to simplify this. But if you think, you know, we all went to school and we learned about the 3 parts of the government. Nobody learned about the regulatory parts of the government. You know how many people working there? How long it takes to deal with all of that? You know, this, I'll tell you right now, this is a lifetime employment deal for the chamber. I mean, we're going to be fighting this stuff till the cows come home, while at the same time, with our other hand, we're saying we should work together and do this. But, you know, when you have to go through the whole EU to do it, and run it through the whole regulatory morass there, and run through all the regulatory stuff here, we're going to have to find a better way. I mean, you put your finger on the deal. Taxes, you know, they cost money, and we got to be careful what they want to do. But you know where the real money is? It's in the regulations. It sucks some money right out the back door. And let's say companies aren't all innocent, because when you want to get a market and want to be competitive, you don't want all those regulations and those obstructions. But as soon as you get it, then you want to put the regulations in so nobody else can get into it. I mean, I'm talking about history. This has been going on in this country for 100 years.
Please.
Thank you. John Simon with Total Impact Advisors. I'm wondering, would one aspect of the type of transatlantic relationship you're describing be a common front towards the emerging economies? And I think about what happened recently when Argentina nationalized a major European asset. Would that then become a U.S. issue as well as a European issue?
Well, you probably don't even have to do a lot of anything formally. I mean, first of all, what you got is a lot of press on that in Europe and here. And more of that's going to come out. And the big question on Argentina and that issue, is that a one-time thing with one oil company, which always had some national interest in it, or will there be another one in 6 weeks or 6 months? If there's the one-time deal and she makes her argument because of all the things that are going on, maybe that won't make a stir. But if it looks like it's a movement in that direction, considering the neighborhood down there and a lot of the discussion that's going on, there would be a unified U.S., EU, and others in the game, whether it is formal or informal, to try and put some muscle into that deal, my opinion.
Let me ask a last question myself. What always interests me when I talk to someone like you, and you spend so much time talking to top executives with operations in dozens of countries, it's a trite question. I hope it won't be a trite answer, which is what keeps you awake at night. If you're looking at the economy right now, perhaps we did just avoid a real crisis in Europe. What is it you now look at, and what is it you say, my God, that's what worries me the most when I look at the world economy right now, and that's what worries me the most when I look at the U.S. economy?
Well, let me try and give 2 points here. First of all, and I'm not going to be trite, we had all of our divisions at the Chamber have a plan for 2012. It's the same way you all run your activities. We have a plan for 2012. We know it's not going to be perfect. We know it's going to have a lot of change. And we've just been getting our groups together and saying, on top of that, we need a plan from April 1st to April 1st. We have to ask ourselves, okay, so the primary thing is sort of over, and we're going to start the general election. Then we get to about June, and we're going to hear on the health care deal. And the health care deal, it doesn't matter whether you pick 1, 2, or 3. If the president wins and they say, no, we don't change it, the first thing he has to do is change it, because he's found out what all these things are going to cost and which ones, need adjustment. They make adjustments. If they, so we have a whole plan. What are you going to do about health care? Then we're going to have an election. I'm doing this to make a very important point. We're going to have an election, so we're going to have to deal with how we go through that. And then when the election happens, then we're going to have 1, 2, or 3 lame duck sessions. Whether they separate them by Christmas, and whether they have one after everybody comes back and they swear in the Congress, but before we swear in the president. And then we're going to have, and it doesn't matter whether Obama wins or Romney wins, you're going to have all sorts of new people here. So we have this existing plan. We sort of have this, what are the issues going to affect us? And you know what happens at the end of the year. Bush tax cuts, they go away. No action required. We're talking about budget things that have to be fixed. Sequestration won't happen on the military, I don't think, because Panetta is about the best guy in the country. Every speech he gives now, he's got a stiff in the audience. Mr. Secretary, what are we going to do about sequestration? And he says, oh, I'm so worried. What are we going to do with our wounded veterans and with pensions and health care? He wins that deal. but he's going to have to get the money out. He's just going to get away. They're going to let him do it in a rational way. So we're watching this whole thing because, and what do we do on the tax deal? That's the worst thing this job's all about, because everybody's got a different. But here's the point I want to make, and what keeps me up at night, all of that is absent a dozen really important questions. What's going to happen in Iran? What's going to happen in Iran with the Israelis? What's going to happen in Syria? What's going to happen in Egypt on the election side? What's going to happen in Venezuela? What's going to happen in North Korea? Now, I could go on, but will anybody here tell me that in the next 12 months, while all of this is going on, none of that's going to happen? Or that 5 things we never thought of are going to happen. And what I think we can organize ourselves as a government and as a business community and with our colleagues around the world to address these realities of the economy and of our global trading relationships. We can do all that. But what happens down here, and what does it do to all of those things? And none of us are smart enough to know what they're going to be. But every one of us is smart enough to know we're not going 12 months without a whole lot of that. And any hint that we could get our hands on and think about and get ourselves prepared for. Because, and remember also, this whole business of terrorism, you know, those of us around know that there were 5 or 6 major attempts at, you know, horrific things that didn't just happen. And I think all the more reasons for people to collaborate globally, all the more reasons for the U.S. to get its act together and fix the things we all know we have to fix. Democrats, Republicans, independents, everybody else, we need a deal so that we can focus on these other very, very challenging issues.
So a period of great volatility and uncertainty,
right,
that you're seeing in general.
And if what I'm thinking about is how we're going to use our assets, how we're going to respond to those things on the Hill, what are we going to do in the elections, all of that, I recognize that there is no down period on what goes on around the world. It's all going to happen, it's all happening, and we don't know exactly what's happening. But it's going to drive every one of these things we're working on.
I'm really, really glad we ended on that note, because that's what we're looking at as well. Britain, in its heyday, doubled its GDP over 155 years. And China and India are doing the same thing in a tenth of the time, with a 9 million population of Britain against, you know, the populations of India. And so it is this huge time. So I want to thank you today for an important set of comments, a visionary set of comments for us caring as much as we do about the transatlantic relationship, but also a very entertaining set of comments. So thank you very much on behalf of the Atlantic Council and the audience.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.